this episode. Alright guys, what's up? Welcome to episode 8, I believe, of ShaggyTv. This episode is called What is the Metagame? And I'm doing this show from a user request. I think Enchantrix was the person's name. I'll pop up the thing in a bit and show you guys. But he wanted to know what a metagame is. So I'm going to read his question he sent to me. I'm really pumped because this is actually why I started this segment. This is the whole reason why I did this show back in like episode 1 through 4, I think. I just did like people just would ask, like, leave comments and leave questions and be like, you know, why is this card good? Why is this card not good? You know, what games can we play while we're leading up to Hex? Things like that. And I would just did a whole show about it. I try to keep it fairly quick, you know, try to keep about 30 minutes or so. And I just did it. And it was like a lot of fun. It was really neat, and I'm really glad that someone has finally asked me another question because, you know, as you know, we started doing videos, people kind of stopped asking questions, so it was kind of bummer to me. So I'm really glad we get back into this and talk about this. So the episode we're doing today is again on metagaming. Also, feel free to ask any questions in chats. I have 2 monitors now, so I can actually answer questions as the show goes on. So please feel free to ask any questions, no matter how stupid you think they are. Ask them. I will hopefully have an answer for you. All right, so let's move on real quick to the question. Let me see if I can pop it up correctly. I think I put it here. Nope, that's wrong. There we go. Alright. So, here's the question that old Enchantrix asked me. He goes, "Hey Shaggy, I've been watching all the Hex TCG Pro videos and videos posted on ShaggyTv regularly, and I had a possible idea for a show. I'm new to TCGs in general, except for dabbling in Magic for a little bit a few years ago. However, I consistently hear it mentioned on several streams about the metagame when referring to drafts and building decks, etc. I've kind of built a little idea on what that means from the various streams' context, but I was wondering if it was possible to get a more in-depth explanation on the metagame and how the factors in the gameplay. Thanks for all the laughs, you're welcome, and great shows. Keep it up." So this is awesome because I love, like, almost more than anything, I love talking about game theory. It's one of my favorite things to talk about because, you know, I've played professional gaming for almost 10 years, and all this stuff is really important for people to understand. I think people always, like, all these topics, people always kind of know a little bit about it, like they kind of understand it, but then always fall off the big picture of it. And metagaming is by far the most, I guess, it seems like it's easy, right? Almost everybody talk to, like, hey, the metagame, what is that? And people are like, oh, it's this is the metagame. And they don't quite grasp actually what it is and how it affects gameplay. So what I did was I took metagaming and I broke it down to what I think is the 3 most important things, and not only what it means, but what it affects, which is actually more important than really actually what it means. But to kind of get a definition going of what it means, I was trying to, I literally, like, looked everywhere on the internet to try to find, like, an actual definition of metagaming, because I'm not really good at that kind of stuff. So I looked up and I found, actually, which was kind of funny, the best definition for metagaming I could find was on Wikipedia, which is actually pretty funny. But we'll pop it up here real quick, which is, that's not right, and there we go. So it says, metagaming is a broad term usually used to define any strategy, action, or method used in-game which transcends a prescribed rule set, uses external factors to affect the game, and goes beyond the supposed limits or environment set by the game. There's also another definition which doesn't matter, not what we're talking about, but for this definition, I think it's kind of confusing. I'm not really going to break it down, but what I'm even going to say is that they have a couple examples of metagaming. I actually thought it was funny that they actually have a kind of an example here just for card games. But I think something that people need to understand about metagaming is that it actually is it's a term used in every game. If it is a game, then there is a metagame to that game, and it's really important for people to understand actually that every game, no matter what game it is that you play, I love saying this all the time, every game is fundamentally the same. And I'm sure as my ShaggyTv episodes go through, we'll get to the different topics of how that is. But literally every single game is exactly the same. You use the same skill base to play checkers as you do StarCraft. And it sounds kind of weird, but it's really important to realize that, because once you understand those factors and once you kind of master them, then it's so much easier to pick up a new game and just dominate people with. You know, you shouldn't learn the game from its face value. You should learn games fundamentally, because that way you'll be good at every game that you play. And metagaming is a part of that. So for this example, the one I'm going to use here says, there's a special set of moves in chess which allows a player to win in 4 moves. Competitor A has been watching competitor B play chess. In the past 5 games in a row, competitor B has attempted to use this 4-move win. When competitor A sits down to play against competitor B, competitor A will be metagaming if he/she plays in a way that will easily thwart the 4-move checkmate before competitor B makes it obvious that this is what he or she is doing. So basically, what this is kind of doing is giving an example of someone cheesing someone in chess. Okay, so like if you're not familiar with what cheesing is a term where it's like people use the, hey, what's up, Asaku? Cheesing is a thing where they use like the most, I guess, cheesy method of winning, right? Like they don't want to actually play you in a whole game because they know if they do, you're probably going to destroy them. So they just try to beat you in 4 or 5 moves. So what this is saying is, if you watch, like old Cheesy McCheeserson over here, like just trying to 4-move checkmate everybody that you play, so you're like, okay, well I actually know how to beat that, so I'll just start out preparing to beat that. And if you're doing that, you're actually metagaming Cheesy McCheeserson. So I thought that was such a cool example. Out of all the examples I read, I thought that one was actually the coolest one because it actually applies to just a simple game like chess. I know people look at chess and probably don't think there's that much depth to the game. Which actually I think people actually understand there's depth into the game. But there is metagaming just doesn't affect video games. Metagaming affects everything. So it's really important to understand that like metagaming as a whole is a game-wide term. It's not just for Hex. It's not just for card games. It actually affects every game. Okay, so that's kind of how I want to start off with the metagame discussion, but we'll move on to what I think is the 3 big things about metagaming. So we'll move on to number 1 here. I have this like kind of like PowerPoint style thing I'll try to pop up here. So the first one is the core of the game. This is the first thing that metagaming affects and the first thing that kind of plays its role into metagaming as a whole. So what I mean by that is every game has a core, and once you understand what the core is, which is normally just like, for example, in chess, the core of the game is the pieces, right? And StarCraft, the core of the game is the units. And let's see, Street Fighter, the core of the game would be the fighters that you pick. That is the core of the game. That's the part of the game that you yourself always play and always kind of interact with, right? There's obviously way more other things, but the core is kind of what the metagame starts to shape. Even like that's where it starts. So the core of Hex, for example, would be the cards. Right? It's pretty simple. So the cards are drastically affected by the metagame. So we'll move on first to kind of talk about the first thing, and that's evaluation, right? When you evaluate a card, the first thing that you should do is look at the card and understand how it affects the overall game, okay? Because the overall game, once you kind of start understanding how it works, starts to develop the metagame, okay? So we'll look at a quick example of a magic card. All right? I have actually 2 cards that I want to talk about, but we'll start off with the magic card first, and we'll look at a card called Gutshot. Okay, so the card is 1 red Phyrexian mana, which basically means you can pay 2 life and play it no matter what colors are in your deck, and it says Gutshot deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Okay, so there's formats within Magic where you could. Phyrexian mana is awesome, by the way. It's actually broken as hell, but that's a completely different show. You'll look at this card and say, okay, Gutshot deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Okay, that seems maybe okay, and people will just kind of pass off and not really worry about it. Okay, and that's true, right? You can look at Gutshot and see that it deals 1 damage and think, not a big deal, that's alright. But if the format that you're playing in has a bunch of 1-life creatures, then Gutshot is really, really good. That's actually what happened, right? Like, that's one reason why Delver was really powerful, right? Every deck had like 2 to 3 1-life creatures in their deck, so you could just have Gutshot in your deck and easily deal with those creatures. Now, if those creatures were 2-power creatures, for example, then Gutshot would not be very good at all. So it's really important to understand that the card itself, you can't just look at this card in a vacuum. Dusty says this all the time on Hex TCG Pro, and it's actually very apparent in metagaming. You can't just look at this card and say, deal 1 damage, that's pretty bad, because you don't know. What if every creature has 1 life? Then this card's absurd and very, very good, especially since it's free. But like, that's really important to kind of understand. So we'll look at one more card, and this is actually a Hex card, kind of following the same thing. We'll talk about Vampire King. Okay, this is one of my favorite cards, and it's a black card, I guess a blood card. It says, Flight, when an opposing troop dies, if this troop is in play, transform that troop into a vampire, and put it into play under your control. Okay, so this effect is extremely powerful. Like, I cannot stress enough how every time you kill an opponent's creature, you make I think it's a 2/2 flyer, how powerful that effect is. Okay, I don't have to explain that to you. That has nothing to do with actual metagaming. That's just a very powerful effect. The problem is, Vampire King has 3 health. Okay, so right now, currently, with the cards we've seen, that's pretty good. Like, he's not going to get just shit on. Okay, it's actually pretty good. But the problem is if at any point there's a gut shot type effect, but it deals 3 damage, then Vampire King might not be very playable, right? If he just kind of gets in, and let's say there's a card in Magic, right? One red, deal 3 damage to target creature or player, okay? whenever that card was legal in Magic, every creature had to have 4 or more toughness or it wasn't really good enough to play. And that's a big deal in metagame, right? That's a big deal in just card evaluation. That's why it's so important. You can't just evaluate the card by just looking and reading the card. You have to understand how that card plays in the game. Okay, so like if Vampire King is in a format where there's no like 3 damage removal, the Vampire King is going to be absurd and easily take over the format. So that's really important, and that's kind of like, as we see releases, that's something that we are, as a team, are looking at. Will Vampire King be stoppable? Does he have a easy counter? No. What's this card coming out? I'll deal 2 damage. Okay, he's still fine. He passes the test. He passes the test. And then we at the end, once we see the full spoiler, we can look and say, okay, actually Vampire King's really good. Let's make a mid-range deck or make a a control deck where Vampire King is the star because he actually won't be able to die. Okay, so that's kind of a way that card evaluation plays into metagaming. So obviously by evaluating the cards that way, by seeing, okay, this guy has 3 toughness, there's no 3-drop removal, good, that's really good, that this guy is good. By doing that, we can take cards and give them a power rating, right? We can be like, this card's really good, he's a 5-star, he's very good. This card is a 4-drop 1/1 that has tons of 1-drop, like 1 power removal. Okay, this guy's really bad, right? And we can evaluate that. There's other things that we evaluate cards in. I mean, there's not just like considering the meta, right? It's like mana cost, threshold, those are all really big things. Power and toughness, all big things that we evaluate cards in. But I'm just talking about metagame. Once we see how that card kind of can perform in the meta, right, we give them a power, right? So we're like, this card is very strong. We can say it's 5, okay? So after we do that, after we have all the best cards figured out, after we evaluate all the cards, that lets us make the decks that we play, right? So like metagaming actually, just through evaluation of cards, by just using the core mechanics of a game, determines the decks that we play, okay? And then once we make a deck, right, let's say we make this really good deck, that makes it so that is a meta deck, right? That's a deck that we have made to combat the meta, which is nothing right now. Like when the game first comes out, there won't be a meta, right? There'll be people just putting cards in their deck and throwing them out. What's this do? How's this do? Let's see. Let's put a bunch of 1-drops in and see if we can just win by aggroing, right? And normally, whenever a game comes out, the aggro decks are always the best because they always build themselves, right? There's nothing, when the game first comes out, there's not much that you can predict, right? You can look at the cards and say, these cards are pretty good, but the actual core of the game is usually always ran over by just aggressive decks because those are always good, right? They have no interaction with their opponent. They just throw down 1-drop guys or 2-drop guys, hasters, whatever, and just try to kill you, right? And then once you see, okay, we have mono red doing really good. We have a mono ruby deck doing very good, right? We have this black, green Shinhair deck that's doing very good, right? We have this mono blue deck that's doing pretty decent, right? Then those 3 decks would make the meta, and then you, as a player, can use these cards that you found to try to figure out ways to stop it. Okay, so that's kind of how the core of the game shapes into the meta. To understand that process is very, very important, right? You can't just look at a card as soon as you see it and immediately say if it's good or bad, because no matter how bad you think it is or could be, there's always a time or a meta where that card could actually be playable, right? And then there are cards, like, don't get me wrong, there are cards that are just trash, and that happens, right? That's just a designer's fault, right? That's not your fault, that's not a game's fault, that's just a designer's fault. They made the card too bad, and they'll have to go back and fix it, or just whatever. All right, so that's how metas, that core kind of shapes the meta, and how the meta forms the core, I guess. So moving on to the next bullet point. Actually, we'll leave this up here. I have them all both up. We'll talk about play. So this is the next thing that the meta directly kind of changes, right? Is the play, right? Your play, how you play the game, is affected normally by the meta. So moving forward, the way that play directly affects it is by decision making. Decision making is very, very important, and very, very I guess I'll actually say it's just very important in every game you play, right? Every decision you make should be based, hopefully, on what your opponent's playing and how you think you can win the game by making that decision, right? So if you're playing chess, for example, and you want to move a piece forward, or let's say you want to move your knight, right? You can move your knight, but before you move your knight, you need to think, is he going for this strategy? Is he going for this strategy? Is that a good play? Will he take this? And that's obviously directed, like, completely, like, just locked in together with the metagame, right? It's easier to make decisions if you understand how those decisions affect the metagame. So if your opponent is playing a mono ruby deck that we just talked about, right? And you have an opening hand, right, of all 6-drop creatures, okay? You might want to be like, I probably shouldn't keep this hand because I'm going to die on turn 5, right? That's a decision that you made based on the metagame of the red deck, right? You play against red deck, you know that red deck can kill you at turn 4, so instead you want a hand that has a lot of removal. You want a hand that has a lot of, maybe a board wipe or two, right? That's a better hand to keep against this mono red aggressive deck. Okay, that's how one way that the metagame can directly affect your play. Moving on, let's see, is your reaction. Okay, this is really important, and this is like actually the one big problem that I have with card games. And we'll kind of get into this a little bit later. I'll probably do a whole show just about this. But this is actually one big deal I have about card games, right? The metagame is really shaped about how you react to it. Okay, and the way that you react to the metagame is by playing, right? Like you don't react in any other way in card games, right? You play, actually just in games in general, you interact with the metagame by playing. So let's say that I'm playing StarCraft. We use StarCraft as an example, okay? And I'm playing Zerg. I'm doing my stuff. I'm owning noobs, right? And then I use a scout to move forward and check out the opponent, right? And here he comes with like 5 Marines and like maybe a couple Marauders or something, right? Okay, so I can relate from that and be like, cool, I'm getting rushed. So I go Hydroling, sure. So I'm getting rushed. So I will counter that by doing this. I will react to that thing that I see by doing this. Okay, it's pretty straightforward, right? In card games, you really don't have that information, right? In almost every game I've ever seen or ever really experienced, you can scout, you can react, I guess proactively from what your opponent's doing, right? So it's really important to I'd go roaches for Marines, sure. But so like one of the most important things to do is to react to these things, right? So if you see your opponent drop a ruby, right, a ruby resource, or a ruby resource, you're like, okay, so he has ruby in his deck, right? Like you obviously don't know, you never played against this guy, cool. So he might be doing the mono red strategy, right? But you don't want to, devote too much into that, right? Now if he uses the red to drop a 1-drop, 2/1, okay, it's pretty safe to say that this guy's probably going to be playing like a more aggressive deck, right? So you need to adjust your plan with Overload Rush, blot out the sun. Arrows will blot out the sun. So you want to react to this play, right? You can easily do that, but the problem is it's already too late, right? It's like if you've kept a hand of higher drop creatures, or maybe it's like that's in itself a terrible hand to keep. Let's say you just kept a pretty normal hand, right? No big deal. I kept this normal hand. It looks pretty good, and then your opponent's like, I'm playing rush strategy, get shit on, play all my guys out, kill you, right? You had no way to react to that, right? Which is why in card games we play best of 3s, right? We play best of 3s so this way we know, cool, this guy's playing Ruby, now I can effectively react to that. So it's really important to realize that you can use your sideboard as a part of this, which we'll get into a little bit later, to build your deck around that meta, right? My game 1's really bad against rush strategies, let's say. Okay, that's cool. I'll just put in a lot of cards in my sideboard that allows me to beat these rush strategies, for example, right? That's a really cool way to kind of react to your opponent playing. It sucks, though, that you have to lose, A, that you have to lose a game to do that. B, it sucks that you might put in, let's say you put in 10 cards into your deck, right? To beat this this meta rush deck, okay? So you do that, and then you don't draw any of the cards, right? Like, well, that sucks. Like you didn't actually get to do anything against it. Okay, let's see. When we see their champion and the champion's power list. Okay, yes, thank you. I'm getting into that. Thank you so much. Yes, very smart. So what I was actually getting ready to move into, I'll just go ahead and kind of move into it since you're talking about this. The coolest thing about this game, and I did it all the time in Gen Con, was you can actually just look at the champion that you're against and deduct what you could be playing against, right? And I'm glad that you brought that up, because this is kind of it's definitely not Magic. So like in Magic, right, you have no ability to do that, right? I've seen people in Magic, like if there's let's say a mono red deck that's doing really good, they'll sleeve their deck, their like blue control deck or whatever, in red sleeves and set them in front of them. So that way their opponent might think that they're playing mono red. Okay, that's the kind of mind games that happen in Magic that I've seen people do, right? And it's actually kind of smart. Like I get what they're trying to do, right? That way they might keep a bad hand on like the first The first thing, yeah, it's actually hilarious, but it's happened, right? That's a way to kind of out metagame the person. You know, like maybe I know this deck's good, so maybe I'll confuse my opponent. The coolest thing about Hex is they're trying to kind of take care of this play issue by, like you said, having a champion that you can kind of like, oh, okay, he's playing the control champ, right? He's playing the pay 2 life, draw a card. Okay, let's use that as an example, right? Pay 2 life, draw a card. Okay, is that what it is? I'm pretty sure that's what it is. That can actually be used by control players or aggro players, right? The Warlock in Hearthstone, for example, right? He does the same effect, and he's actually usable by control and by aggro players. So I find myself in Hearthstone, I play against a Warlock. It's a lot harder to tell what they're doing than whenever I play against like a Hunter, for example. Exactly. Champion mind games, and this goes further into like this whole metagame thing, right? If the aggro players use this one champion that's like really good, and like let's say they're the only people who use it, right? I actually could see people picking this aggro champion and then building a control deck around them just to blow people out. Not that it would even work, but it is a metagame type of thing, right? Oh, like they'll keep a terrible hand on the first game and then hopefully I can just win because they kept a bad hand, right? And that's the cool things about metagames. The metagame is always changing. It's not a simple thing. It's not. Speaking of, I gotta make a deck with my games. Totally mess with people. Sure. So anyway, back to the kind of the reaction point. It's the most important thing about kind of your reaction, the way that you play, is by scouting your opponent, right? In other games, that's like the most important thing in RTS is scouting your opponents, right? Seeing what they're doing so you can react to it and kind of change it. But you can't scout your opponent. Scouting means nothing, right? If you don't know the metagame currently. So it's really important to understand the cards and what decks are in the metagame. It's what I call the knowledge part of card gaming, right? I basically have a system where I have 5 keys to basically professional gaming, and one of them is knowledge, right? You have to understand the game you're playing, and the knowledge of card games is the metagame and the cards that are in the pool that you're playing. So as an example, we'll bust out another one of my favorite cards. It's called a Mental Misstep, and it is, unfortunately, a magic card. No, whoop, this is the wrong one. Oh my god, I can't believe I clicked the wrong one. Where are you? Oh my gosh, I didn't put it in here, I don't think. Oh no. Okay, I actually am just going to look it up because it's actually that important. I'm so sorry. I actually thought I had it in here, but I didn't. Mental Misstep. That card's still really good. That's not the card I'm talking about. No, how do I spell this? I swear I put this card in here. I don't know why it's not in here. I'm so sorry, guys. This is like very unprofessional. Let's see. Save image as. There we go. Sorry about that. It's kind of the pitfalls of having a live show, I guess. Alright, where are you at? Oh, I did have it in here. It's named differently. Oh, that's my bad. Okay, anyway, it doesn't matter. Here it is. Jataxian Probe. So Jataxian Probe says, look at target player's hand and draw a card. Okay, so this is kind of the scout part of card games, right? So basically, you let's say your opponent's like, green resource, black resource. And there's like no green-black decks in the meta, right? So you're like, oh, what is this guy doing? What's green-black? What's cards? Crap, what's he doing? A card like Jataxian Probe, you're just like, cool, bro, pay 2 life, look at your hand. Oh, okay, you have this guy and this guy. Oh, I see what you're trying to do. Cool, now I can react to it. All right, this is a really cool strategy in card games and a very cool card that allows you to do that. So I haven't seen a card like this in Hex yet, which is kind of disappointing. And like to be fair, these type of cards aren't around a lot. A black version of this card, for example, like Distress and stuff, does a similar effect, right? And so all you do is after you look at your opponent's hand, you just write down the cards in their hand. Cool, this card, this card, this card, this card. Neat. Now I know what cards are in your hand. I can now play around your cards. I can now affect my play by basically looking at your card, by looking at your hand. And this is a very important kind of mindset to kind of get into, right? You need to find a way to always play around what your opponent is doing, and using sometimes the metagame doesn't cut it, and we'll get into this later because the metagame isn't a thing, right? Isn't like the world, right? Like the metagame isn't like this database that like all the best decks just get loaded into, and it's like this is the metagame, you must follow it, right? The metagame is actually different from wherever you play, right? Like, I can go down to my local card shop, right, and the metagame is completely different there. And this is one of the biggest things that players forget, and I'll also touch on later, is the metagame is always changing no matter where you're at. The tournament metagame is much different than, like, the local card shop metagame. So if you take a tournament deck to your shop, sure, you'll probably win because your deck is better. But if you take that tournament deck and kind of change it and kind of modify it for the kind of janky decks that are in your local metagame, then you'll dominate, right? And then when you go to your tournament, yeah, you just change your deck back and move on, right? Like that's something that a lot of people don't do in Magic, right? They go to F&M with the same deck they go to, a Star City Open, right? And they wonder why, like, jank mono red aggro control noob deck beat them, right? It's because they're not prepared for it, right? But if you know Timmy at your shop always plays that deck, then put a couple cards in sideboard so you crush them. Like that's how the metagame changes. You need to change your play based on what the metagame is wherever you're at. Like it's not a static thing. It's always changing. Okay, real quick, read this question. Speaking of, I just learned why I sucked at StarCraft 2. I scouted decently and never knew what to do with the info. At least not as well as I should have. Exactly, right? And that's another thing that we'll talk about, again, a couple more of my bullet points down here, is people like to just watch the pros play, right? And just copy what they do, right? Oh, I watched Idra play. He scouted with a drone and like came over here. So that's what they'll do. They just take their drone. They're like, scout, What are you doing? Cool. That's what Idra did, but they don't actually understand why he did it or even how to further on the point, right? Like all the pros are playing 4 of this card in this deck. I don't know. It looks like a bad card, but I'm gonna play 4 of them too because the pros did it, right? And like they don't even know why, right? Maybe the pros put those 4 cards in a deck, to beat a certain deck in the meta, right? So if you don't know why, if you don't understand the meta, then like you're just copying and you're not really getting copying their decks isn't enough. You have to understand why. Okay, so moving on to the last point of play, and we talked about it a little bit before, so I'm not going to go too more into it, is this sideboarding, right? Sideboarding really affects your play, right? It's a way to kind of, it's your catch in card games, right? If you're like, I can definitely, let's see, a mono green deck is really, like, the mono green deck's the best deck in the format right now, let's say, and a black red deck is the second one, right? So you can build a deck that's really good against black and green, I'm sorry, the black and the red and the green decks, right? You can build your deck to beat those two. But be like, this other deck, not very many people play, this mono blue control deck is very good against my deck. It always beats me, right? So you can just put the cards that are good against that deck in your sideboard, right? That way, now you have a deck that can beat, hopefully, those 3 decks. So use your sideboard as a catch-all. Use your sideboard to strengthen matchups that your core deck isn't very good at. Okay, so moving on to the last thing that the meta kind of changes, and that it also changes the meta. Kind of another part of the meta is formats. Okay, so this is something that people, I don't think, quite. I'm not gonna say people don't understand because they obviously do, but like things that people kind of forget maybe is that will Hex have a sideboard? Yes, it does have a sideboard. It's a 15-card sideboard, just like Magic. Cool. So is formats, right? The meta changes based on what format you're in, right? So let's take StarCraft for example. Okay, the 1v1 meta is much different than the 2v2 meta. Okay, that's very simple, right? That makes perfect sense. So similarly to in Hex, right, the standard meta will be different than the limited meta, right? That's a pretty safe thing to say, right? Some cards will be really, really bad in standard, right? Let's take Atrophy, for example, right? The card's okay in standard, right? It makes sense. Like, sure, -1 permanently and draw a card for 4 mana, right? Whatever. Like, that card's okay, right? If we were evaluating cards, we'd probably give it like a 2, maybe a 3, right? Maybe. That's okay. It's playable, maybe. We'll see. Obviously, again, if there's a lot of one life creatures, the card's nuts, right? But in limited, right, the card is much better, right? That card's much more playable. You can use it for battle tricks. You can use it as removal. Like, it's just a much better card in limited, right? That's a very good example of how formats change the meta and how the meta changes around formats, right? Okay. Also, PvP and PvE is another thing that Hex is going to have to deal with, right? The PvP meta is obviously going to be different than the PvE meta, but they can also coincide and mess with each other, right? That was kind of World of Warcraft's problem, right? And it still is World of Warcraft's problem, right? Like, it's really hard to balance PvP whenever any change you make in the PvP meta, right? Like, let's say, for example, rogues, right, are really bad in PvP right now, right? That's really weird to say, right? Because they're like the stealth ninja class, they should be awesome. However, they're really bad in PvP, right? But they're pretty decent in PvE. They're not the best, but they're pretty decent. So if you just go in and just increase their damage, right, then all of a sudden they're going to be even better in PvE, right? You've just unbalanced one thing for the other. So that's another reason why, the WoW PvP is very hard to balance. The game itself is kind of hard to balance because any change that you make to one class affects 2 different metas, and that's very, very confusing, right? And the same thing will happen in Hex as well. Like, don't get me wrong, right? But they're not changing the cards, which is actually why Corey said he didn't want to change cards. That was one of my biggest, I was so excited that, Hex was a digital format so they could change and buff and cards, right? But they decided not to do it. And I was like, that's like my first question I asked Corey, and he was like, well, we don't want to change a card and have this weird like WoW situation too, where it's like, you know, this card's too powerful and limited. It's like up here in limited, but it's like down here in standard. So if we try to change it down here to make it better in standard, then it's like way too good and like limited. And it's like this really weird, like, you know, kind of up and down scale that's like actually impossible to balance. So it's actually kind of a smart decision by the Cryptozoic people, and I'm sure that it will be fine. So that's it. That's the three big things about metagaming. Is the core. You got to first understand the core of your cards. You have to understand the pieces of your game before you can ever hope to understand the meta or even kind of understand how to change it. Right. The meta is made up of the core pieces of the game. We talked about the core of Hex is obviously the cards, but there's like, take League for example, right? Your champions are your core, right? You take Street Fighter, you have your fighters. You know, like Ryu obviously is like a core fighter in the game, right? Like there's people like, this is actually a pretty good example. Like Ryu for example was very strong, right? So when someone picks Ryu, someone would counter pick them with was the guy, the boxer guy, I forget his name. Crap. I can't remember his name. I know like it was like his boxer name, and then it had a Balrog or whatever, Balrog or whatever. Yeah, that's it. Balrog or whatever. Like he could actually punch through like the little like Haryukens or whatever that Ryu shot. So like he was just better against Ryu, right? But that champion himself, like the fighter Balrog, was actually just pretty bad. But because everyone, yeah, thank you, because everyone was playing Ryu at the time, like he became really good. So that's actually something that's like, that's kind of a way that the core will change the meta. And then we move on to play, right? Play is, again, one of those things that just, that's how you interact with the meta, right? And so you need to make changes to your play by decision-making, scouting, and of course sideboarding to kind of help you be able to affect the metagame, right? Unless you are outside the U.S., I think they kept him as in Bison. Oh, really? That's weird. And then last is the format. So don't forget that just because a card is really good and limited, it does not mean that it'll be good in standard, and vice versa, right? The same thing in StarCraft, for example. Don't think because I don't know, the Marines are very good in 1v1 that they'll be very good in 2v2. Hint, they are still very good in 2v2, as is the whole Terran race. So kind of as for closing here, I'm going to go over a couple cool things. I want to kind of go over a card that I really, really enjoy. It's obviously from Magic, but it's a card called Mana Leak. And I want to kind of explain some tricks that I used to do with this card, and kind of how I'm not gonna say I metagame people, right? Obviously I did, as a definition of metagame people, I did. But a lot of people did this. This wasn't just me. I didn't like create this, but this is kind of like a way that I can explain metagaming to you guys. So we'll take Mana Leak as an example. It's 1 blue, 1 colorless, counter target spell unless its controller plays 3. So how it works is if you pay any card in the game, I will play Mana Leak and at instant speed, and you have to pay 3 more to cast that spell. If you don't, it just goes to your graveyard. Okay, so if you're not familiar with Magic, that's how the card works, right? So I played a deck called Delver, which is like, I hate to always bring that up as my examples, but I just haven't played Magic for very long. So it's like one of the only decks that I've got to play from start to finish or really understand how it works. So I'm sorry about that if that's a concern. So if to play Mana Leak at instant speed, right, I have to have 2 mana open on my opponent's turn, right? So if your opponent is going to play, let's say, a 3-drop on turn 3, right, he has to wait till turn 6 to play it, okay, because to play it safely, right? So if I have Mana Leak in my hand, I'll leave 2 mana open, right, and my opponent's just like, play my 3-drop, right? You're like, cool, Mana Leak it, now I shit on you, okay? But a good player will be like, ah, crap, he might have Mana Leak open. Okay, so they have no way to look at your hand, like through Probe, for example. They'll just wait until they have 3 more mana to play your spell. Okay, the problem with Mana Leak, however, though, is once you get to turn 6, Mana Leak is pretty bad, right? It's very strong early game, and it's very bad late game, right? If someone has 12 mana up, right, there's no way to Mana Leak anything, right? If they play a 6-drop, they can play that card twice, so making them play 3 more mana is the big deal. Okay, so what I did, and what a lot of players did, I don't want to act like this was like my thing that I did, was I would just take Mana Leaks out of my deck. Okay, but on my opponent's turn, I would keep 2 mana open. Okay, and I was playing Delver at the time, which ran Mana Leaks, so my opponent would be like, ah, he has Mana Leak up. Crap, I can't cast this spell. Right? And I don't even have Mana Leaks in my deck, but the guy still had to play around Mana Leak, or he would just lose if he played his 3-drop or whatever, right? That's an example of metagaming, basically, right? And then after that game, right, people would be like, oh man, like, you beat me, man, that Mana Leak you might have had. And I'd be like, oh, I don't have Mana Leak in my deck anymore. I just took them out. And they'd be like, oh crap, what the heck, that's so awesome, man. And then the next Friday Night Magic, I'd put them back in. So the same guy would play against me, he'd be like, haha, Windmill Slam this 3-drop. I'd be like, oh, sick, Mana Leak it. Right? That's a really good way that you could do it. And the pros did the same thing, right? Sometimes they would put Mana Leaks in their deck, sometimes they wouldn't. But the problem is, once you get in the top 8s and stuff of like these serious tournaments, they actually show you their deck list, so it's a lot harder to not have them in your deck at the pro level. But that's a very good example of how to metagame, right? How to play off what your opponent knows to play that kind of against them, right? And Mana Leak was such a cool card to be able to do that with. It was such a fun time to play Magic, unlike right now. So I kind of want to break down Delver a little bit and kind of explain a little bit of how me and my buddy Zach, which I really want to get on the show, by the way, I think I'm going to here in a couple weeks, how we kind of changed our version of Delver to deal with the metagame at our shop, basically, okay? So we talked a little bit about Gut Shot. I will bring it back up here real quick. I kind of explained how it's, pay 2 life, deal 1 damage, right? And at the time, the format had a bunch of 1 power creatures, right? But however, because they had a bunch of 1 power creatures, most of them, because they're 1 power, cost 1 mana, right? So we're like, okay, we really want 4 Gut Shots in our deck because that's really good versus the meta. But like, actually, we wish we could have 6 Gut Shots, right? Like, or 8 Gut Shots, right? Because it's that good, right? We really want that right now, right? But obviously, you can only have 4 of 1 card in your deck, so we wasn't able to do that. So what we did is we looked through the cards and came up with this card here called, maybe I can find it. I have so many cards up here now, called Middle Misstep, right? Which is pay 2 life for X mana, counter target spell with converted mana cost 1, right? At the time, it wasn't played that much. It was considered a decent card, but not very good. And but in the current meta that we were playing, right, Middle Misstep was kind of like another Gut Shot, right? So instead of Gut Shotting the one power 1/1 or whatever, like the 1 cost 1/1, we would just Middle Misstep it, right? It served the same purpose, right? It also affected other spells and stuff in the meta, which also made it better as well. But if the format itself didn't have all these 1-cost cards, then Middle Misstep would have been pretty bad. So that's kind of an example of how we added in another card just because the meta itself allowed it. It was actually pretty good in the meta. And if it's bad, you just sideboard it out. No big deal. So that's kind of an example of some stuff we added in. I think I had another example here, but I actually can't find it. I have so many pictures up here now. So we'll just move on to the next thing. Sure, is that that it's always really important to remember. By the way, this is kind of my closing points, guys. I only have about 2 more things to talk about. So if you guys have any questions about the metagame or any questions just at all, now would be the time to ask them because I'll get to them by the end of the show. So anyway. It's really important to realize that the meta shifts all the time, right? It's never the same, right? And I think that's like kind of the biggest problem right now of kind of all these like online decks and all these like now that the age of gaming has kind of moved to online, right? Like all the information for games is online constantly. It's just constantly online. It's like here's this deck list, here's a deck list at 1 top 8. So what a lot of players will do is they'll just copy those deck lists, right? They'll just be like, cool, that's a good deck, I'll play it. Now I have the best deck. And what they don't understand is the pros are the ones changing the metagame, right? They're not the ones that have to kind of go online and get their decks, right? They're the ones that are making the decks and changing the meta, right? And it doesn't even have to be something simple like making a whole new deck, right? It's just changing maybe 2 cards out of the deck that won last week, so it's better against maybe the same version of itself, right? And that's how the meta kind of evolves. And pros are always doing that. They're the ones who are always a step ahead, right? They're not copying off you. You're actually always copying off them. And that's the most important thing to realize. If you want to be good at a game, you always want to be 1 step ahead of the meta. You always want to be the one that's changing the meta itself, right? You want to be the one that's like, there's no. Oh, this new card came out. It shits on 3-drop creatures, like 3 power creatures. Cool. Let me take out all my 3 power creatures and put in these really cool, like pretty decent 4 power creatures, right? And the guy that's the guy that's sitting at home is like, I'm gonna shit on all these 3 power creatures with this 3 power removal spell. And like you play against them, and now you have no 3 power removal guys in your deck, right? You've just like outmeted them, right? You've understood that card's good enough to probably affect the game, so you should probably, without even having to get beat by the card, change your deck. So that's why pros are always on top, guys. They're not always on top because they always get the best draws. They're not always on top because they're godlike at Magic or card games, right? They're always on top because they understand the meta at a different level than almost everyone else who plays, and they're actually they're beating you because they're beating you with the deck that you'll be playing next week after you copy them again. Does that make sense? So if you want to be a pro player, you can't follow what people are doing. You have to start making decisions yourself and trying to sculpt a metagame with your own creations. Not decks, just changes. Right? You need to be ahead of the metagame. You need to understand it and try to change it yourself. In closing, real quick, guys, really the most important part about metagaming is just to playtest, right? Get a group of your guys together. Just be like, guys, let's these 3 decks, right? These 3 decks are awesome, right? They're beating everyone, right? So we make what we always call a gauntlet, right? You make those 3 decks and you just play against them with all these different decks you make. Understand what cards in those decks beat you and how to make decks that maybe try to find one deck that's good against all 3. And if you can do that, then you are almost assuredly going to win at a higher rate than the other people. So playtesting is very important, guys. Having a team to playtest against is very important. That's also one of my actually one of the things I'm the most excited about with Hex is the ability to just play games nonstop. You don't have to worry about someone coming over and playing. You can just jump in, in your boxers and just play people and try to come up with your own meta. So, all right, guys. Okay, actually, see, Shaggy, when you played Hex at Gen Con, did you notice if you can exhaust a troop when you first put it into play to use their ability not to attack? Sure. So, I have actually, I don't think there was a card that did that at Gen Con. I'm actually trying to think really quick if there was. I don't think there was, so I couldn't comment on that. My assumption would be that you can, just like you can in Magic. So really quick, kind of in closing, I actually thought this might be, yeah. Oh, you're right, Argus, yeah. No, you can't then, because you can't tap Argus when it comes out. That's actually, thank you. That was such a stupid thing that I didn't know. Yeah, you can't, bub. So real quick, I want to kind of show you guys an example of metagaming and something that we did real quick. Shit. Let's see. Here we go. Gen Con deck lists. Okay, so here's all the deck lists of Gen Con. I'm gonna make sure this is actually working. Okay. Yeah. Okay, it is. Okay. So this is all the decks at Gen Con that we played, right? And me and Tad and I think Dusty on the way up there, and Sean obviously because he was there. We kind of looked at all these deck lists and we're trying to figure out which one was the best, right? Like which one of these are the best. Let's say, for example, this is the best way I can take it, is you think this deck right here is the best. Let's say you say, the life gain deck is very good. It's very powerful, which it was. Like, don't get me wrong, the deck was very powerful. I think that the life gain deck is the best, right? It has all these sick creatures, like, Living Totem's really good. This does not pop up. Cool, I can show you guys Living Totem. But I think, actually, if I click it, I think it just pops up, yeah. Living Totem's really good. This is such a cool card. And it has this really cool life gain ability where you can just poop on people. And, like, that, sure, that works. You're completely right. The problem is you look at this deck up here, right? This Polka, the Conflagrator deck, right? And you look at a card called Emberspire Witch. It says, Champions Kit Gain Health. Uh-oh. That's really, really, really good versus the life gain deck. So you need to understand that if you are playing the life gain deck and you come up against a player playing this mono red deck, you're probably going to lose if he has a witch, right? So most people are like, no big deal, I'll just remove it, right? I'll just kill it. I'll use one of my kill spells or whatever, I'll just kill it. Okay, so you look down here at the mono white deck and you're like, wait a second. They have no removal spells to actually kill it. Oh, wait, they have repel here. Hang on, let's check this out. Destroy target attacker or blocking troop. Now I got him. No big deal. So if you're the red guy, right, the red player, you need to go, all right, I'm playing against this white deck down here. This guy is going to get blown out by this Emberspire Witch that I kept. Cool. So what I'll do is he can only kill it if I attack, because with repel, right, that's the only way he can kill it, right? He can interconflict it, but its actual effect still works. So I'll just never attack with my Emberspire Witch. And now you've just metagamed, for example, like just how this short deck list, right? We know that the white deck is very weak versus the mono red deck, and then if the player plays it correctly, will probably beat you almost every time they play if they get their Emberspire Witch out, at a good time. So just by this simple little Gen Con deck list, we can make that easy conclusion that this deck is very weak versus this deck, and if you're playing this deck versus this deck, you do not attack with your Ember Spire Witch ever. Okay, does that make sense, guys? That's a very good example of metagaming just at Gen Con. Cool. So, guys, I don't know if you have any more questions about it. Actually, I think you just did. Did you notice if you kill a Phoenix Guard Aeronaut with like a murder on your turn, you can attack since the effect is dead, or does the card effect go into play as soon as you play a card? I would imagine that you should, maybe I should just read it. Here's Phoenix Guard Aeronaut. Let's see. Each opposing champion who played a non-resource card this turn can attack with troops. Each opponent champion attacked with a troop this turn. Yeah. What I would think would happen was that you wouldn't be able to this turn, because you actually you played the spell while it was in effect. Does that make sense? And then after it would affect you, and then you'd kill it, and then you wouldn't be able to this turn. But then next turn you could play them obviously as normal because he's dead. Cool. Which is a reason why he's actually another good reason why that card's really neat is because he affects the board no matter what. Like even if he dies, he still affects the board. Alright guys, well I think that's it for ShaggyTv episode 8. Please, first of all, thank you Enchantrix so much for your comment. I'm not sure if you're in the chat room, I don't know, but thank you so much, by the way, for your suggestion. I love that. That's the whole point of the show is to, I am very experienced in games, right? Like I understand games, I understand what a metagame is, right? But I'm not experienced in card games. So I really wanted to make this show to kind of like learn card games with you guys, right? You guys can see me learning, and I think that's really going to help people who are new at the game, right? So like, it was after talking with John and stuff and really understanding, it's very easy for me to understand what a metagame is coming from StarCraft and Warcraft 3, right? I understand that very easily. So it's a lot easier for me to learn. So hopefully you guys can learn from that. And moving on with our other ShaggyTv episodes, hopefully together we can learn, things about card games. If you guys have any more questions, please don't feel free to ask. I'm still going to do like a couple shout-outs here and go over the shout-out stuff. So, but anyway, and Chatrix, thank you so much for the question. If you guys have any questions, feel free to message me on Twitch. I'm actually in the process of making a YouTube channel as well. I'm just going to try to always put a clip up every day on the YouTube channel of something, whether it's me playing Hearthstone or Hex or Soulforge or League or something. I'm just going to put a funny clip or something up every day, and I'll put all these ShaggyTv episodes there as well. This episode also will still be on hextcgpro.com. I'm not going to change it from there or anything. I just mean I want a little ShaggyTv YouTube channel to kind of give you guys something. I feel like some days that I can't stream, I would still like to be able to give you guys some content or something that you can watch. So I want to do it there. Okay, see, can you do a ShaggyTv about aggro versus combo versus control decks? Sure. Yeah, I think that would be a really, really cool show. Yeah, I could definitely do that. I might do that next week, actually. We'll see. I would actually really like to wait until the actual cards are out so I could just build a hex deck of each one and then talk about them. But if I can't think of something else to do the next show one, I will. Because I don't care to do it again. Like I don't care to go over it again. Yeah, that's another good suggestion. Okay, so back to these shoutouts. Alright, here we go. Oh, first try, I got it, screen. So anyway, guys, I added a couple new things to my stream. The thing I want to show you guys here is this awesome Shaggy Bus picture that's Shad did. You can check it out on our Facebook page. I just want to thank Shad again for doing this awesome picture. It's so cool. Also, I changed my schedule up a little bit to have everything that I've streamed the last week. So I made this a little bit more different, basically. So you guys check that out. I'll try to update the schedule more often. I'm sorry I'm always really slow on that. I actually always forget to do it. Like I always think that I'll do it, and I don't. So please, here, check it out. If you guys have any more suggestions about my stream, please, guys. I mean, I need to get I might actually just make a forum on our Hex TCG Pro website or something. I just really want a place for you guys to be able to kind of give me suggestions for the stream, right? Like if you guys hate something that I'm doing or don't like content or have suggestion for the way I do things, please let me know somehow. Like you can always send me a message on Twitch. Wow, Sagception, yeah, for sure, dude. I actually know how that happened. Oh, I know how it happened. I was actually, yeah, there it is. Cool. All right. So the next part is hextcgpro.com, our Facebook website. Please come by and check this out. This is where you can get all the details of all of our cool giveaways and what we're doing that day. So please check this out. Also, here's Shad Blunt's. Oh no, it's actually him as a person, not the card. I'm so sorry that I just revealed you to the world. This card is so cool. So this card's OP, by the way. Like Shaggybus is like the most OP card ever. So that's what you guys know about that. Yeah, you can come here and check out all of our giveaways, what we're doing this week. everything Hex TCG Pro related, please check out Hex TCG Pro Facebook. Also, you can go to our website, which I thought I had popped out, but I did not. I don't know why it's loading really slow. Probably because I'm live. Yeah, check out hextcgpro.com. Tata's new article's out about building a big red control deck, which is basically a mono red control deck, which is really cool. He used some of the new cards that was spoiled this week, or actually I guess last week. So come by, check this out, give Tata a heads up, and tell him how awesome his article is, because he does a great job. Also, back to my stream one more time. Don't be afraid to check out the other streamers as well, Dusty and John. I don't think they're actually. I think Dusty's streaming SoulForge. John isn't streaming anything, but he actually did just get his new computer in today, I think. So he should be hopefully streaming something eventually. Also for this week, I'll be doing basically just Hearthstone stuff, and then don't forget the Hex TCG broadcast Thursday at 9. You can check that out. I'm actually not sure what we're covering this week, but I will actually fill it in right here whenever I do know. Do you know the topic on Thursday's show? Yeah, I do not. I'm sorry. We're definitely going to talk about the new cards that were released on Thursday, and I know that John wanted to talk about, I think, his deck, both the decks he made, and I think Dusty had something he wanted to talk about as well, so I'm not really sure what they want to talk about. I kind of let them do their thing, what they want to talk about, because I'm really bad at coming off topics of shows. They're much better than I am. So that's kind of what's going on in the world. Also, don't forget to check out Charles' stream. I always forget to put it up here. I'm so sorry, Charles. It's actually Aaron Squire. It's right here. I'll show you guys this. This is Charles. He's the other guy that's on our Hex TCG Pro. You can check it out here. He also apparently has a YouTube channel, so check that out as well. I'll link it here in chat for you guys in case you guys want to check him out. I need to put him up there. I always forget to. So I apologize, Charles. Alright guys, so thank you so much again. Chatrix, thank you so much for coming up with the topic. It was a blast to do. I hope you guys learned something about the... I never see him streaming. Oh, maybe he's not streaming. I'm not sure. I have all the guys followed, but I never really pay attention to my email. So, yeah. So hopefully they'll be streaming. I know John will be streaming all the time as soon as it goes live, and I'd imagine Dusty would be doing the same thing. I also think Sean is going to start streaming as well once the game comes live as well. So. Guys, again, thank you guys all so much for coming by and watching. You guys are all rock stars. I appreciate it so much. If you have any more topics or anything you guys want to see, don't be afraid to send me a Twitch message. I'm also going to set up an email. I'll have that ready hopefully by next week, and I'll kind of go over that too. So you guys can email me show ideas, or if you guys want to email me cards to talk about or whatever, I will do it. So guys, thank you again for another awesome Shaggy TV. It's a pleasure being here with you guys. You guys make this all worth it, so thank you so much. I will see you guys Thursday for the Hex TCG Procast. Tomorrow I'll probably be streaming some Hearthstone as well, about 8 o'clock at Eastern Time. I'll probably work on I think a Shaman control deck is what I might do, or maybe do like a Shaman tempo deck or something. I know Master Fett was wanting me to do a Shaman deck, so I might actually break down a Shaman deck and kind of go into detail with it. My buddy Aaron, he actually just got in the beta as well. So I'll maybe me and him will play against each other, and we'll talk about the decks and stuff, talk about some cards. I'll come up with something. I'm actually thinking about start doing a Hearthstone daily too, like maybe just a really quick 30-minute show of talking about a couple decks and doing some cards about it too. So and I'll kind of go over that stuff later, but that's kind of an idea I'm having moving forward. So guys, thanks again for watching it. You guys are all awesome. Master Fett, Saku, Ray, you guys are all awesome. If I missed anybody, I'm sorry. These guys are just so cool. So we'll talk to you guys later. Thanks, guys.